Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Andy Campbell and this is 12 and a half minutes, brought to you by Elevator, one of Scotland's leading entrepreneurial and business support organisations. And we broadcast every single week live on social media, YouTube, Facebook and now on LinkedIn to give you your weekly hit of hope, information and inspiration. We're live, as I say, on social media, and if you've got any questions for today's fantastic guest, please make sure that you put your comments and put your questions in, and if we can get them onto the programme, we'd be delighted to do so. So today, this morning, I woke up, the sun was streaming through the blinds, blue skies in Paisley, blue skies in Scotland, and blue skies, in fact, across the whole of the UK. And I think when that happens, it really does start your day off really well. It makes you happy. It's as simple as that. You wake up in a slightly more positive mood. The weather is fantastic and you go about the day with a spring in your step. And that is what today is all about. It's about happiness. It's about inspiration. It's about optimism. It is about feeling good. And therefore, I'm absolutely delighted that today's guest is all about this. A man whose cup is always more than half full. And today's guest is comedian, best-selling author, international speaker, entrepreneur, the one and only Mr. Gavin Oates. Gavin,
hello.
How are you, sir?
Do you know, I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited. I loved all the dramatic music at the start.
Well, we've been doing so well in the production team to get that as good as we possibly can, Gavin. Now, I told you about me waking up this morning just a moment ago and the sun was streaming through the blinds. And then I jumped onto Twitter, as you do, a morning routine, and I saw a tweet that really excited me this morning. And it was a tweet from yourself, Gavin, and you were filling up your paddling pool.
Yeah. And it took 2.5 hours to do it, but it's been worth the wait. We have a dreadful hose, but we have a massive paddling pool that my mum has actually sent for the kids. And we decided today was the day. So 2.5 hours to fill it. And I spent at least an hour and a half lying in it, pretty much by myself. So it was brilliant.
Well, that sounds like a good place to spend some time in the sunshine. And Gavin, I'm kind of almost disappointed that we're not conducting this chat here with you in your paddling pool. I think if we get you back onto the show, that will be the place that you need to conduct your chat.
I genuinely thought about it. I even had a conversation with my wife about how easy it would be to get the laptop and the camera and things out into the garden, and it was starting to be a bit of a nightmare. So I'm now that you've mentioned it, I'm disappointed in myself. But next time.
What were you thinking, Gavin? Next time, absolutely. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's brilliant to have you on. And as we ask all of our guests to maybe take some time, a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, give a little bit of an overview on who they are and what they're up to these days, and then we'll dig into some questions. So without further ado, I'll put you full screen and it's over to you, Gavin.
Fab, thank you very much. So again, a big hello to everybody that's going to be watching this either live or over the course of the next sort of 24, 40 hours. My name's Gavin Oates and I've just lost a headphone. My name is Gavin Oates. I live in Edinburgh. I started out my life, I grew up in Troon on the west coast of Scotland. I left Troon at the age of 18, went off to Aberdeen where I trained to become a primary school teacher of all things. But at the exact same time as training as a primary school teacher, I became completely and utterly obsessed with the world of stand-up comedy. So I threw myself onto the comedy circuit at a very, very young age and discovered very quickly as I was in the classroom during the day and in the clubs at night that actually those two things are pretty much the same thing. You know, you spend whether you're in the classroom in front of 30 kids or you've got 20 minutes in a comedy club in front of 150 adults, you have to capture everyone right from the start, take them on this wonderful journey from start to finish. Everyone's got different interests. Everyone's got different, likes and dislikes and levels of ability. But it's your job to make sure that you take them on this wonderful journey. And at the end, they're walking out the door absolutely buzzing. And I just loved the fact that the work I was doing with young people was helping the comedy, and the comedy was helping the work that I do with young people. And at the end of the 4 years, having graduated as a primary school teacher, I actually made the decision initially to pursue comedy full time. And it took me all over the world. And this was, age 21, took me to the Melbourne Comedy Festival in Australia. It took me to New Zealand, California, New York, London, of course, the Edinburgh Fringe. And then, like all great rock and roll stories, Andy, it all imploded, it all fell apart, unfortunately. And I made the decision to go back into teaching. And it was at that point that I really fell back in love with the world of education and going into schools and making a difference. And then one day I got the chance to go on a workshop, which was billed as a kind of motivational workshop. And I didn't really want to go, if I'm being honest, because, I thought it might be a bit of a waste of time and, I had better things to be doing with my time, but I couldn't have been more wrong. It was the best workshop I've ever been on in my life. It was hugely inspiring. It was challenging in all the right ways. And I walked out thinking, that's his job. He's taken my two loves, comedy and teaching, put them together and created a business. And I thought, I'm going to go and do that. And if we fast forward now, 17 years, I get to travel the world now, speaking at the most wonderful events, delivering all sorts of weird and wonderful workshops, both in education and business. And I now spend a huge amount of time writing books as well, which has been a real goal of mine for a long time. So yeah, super exciting.
And Gavin, it's, we've been running 12 and a half minutes for a number of weeks now, and it feels today like it's almost a proper program, because we've got someone on the show that's promoting a book as well, because you've just completed your book. In fact, we've got a picture of you here, Gavin. There we go.
Look at that.
Waterstones, and you've got it there yourself as well.
I do. I've got it right here. I'm unbelievably proud of this book. This is it's not my first book, but it's the first book I wrote on my own. My other three books I co-authored. Yeah. So this was an interesting one, because I wrote it at a time where life was great, and then I hit a moment where I was really struggling with anxiety, and then it went great again, and then my anxiety was creeping back in. So the book actually has kind of captured all the highs and lows of the journey that I was going through, and I didn't probably realize that until I'd finished writing it, that this book had been a real cathartic experience for me and taking me on this journey. So no, it's been super exciting, and the feedback's been amazing, Andy.
I know. Well, I thankfully was able to download it on Audible. So I spent last weekend painting a utility room with you in my ears, Gavin. A couple of bits I must admit, I missed a bit of the painting, because you had me laughing, you had me crying as well, Gavin. I'll be very honest. It's a really emotional, honest journey of your life, the lessons that you've learned and the things that you do to help you get along in that journey. And I want to kind of dig into some of that right now, Gavin, because you talked about you kind of qualifying as a school teacher and working with our young people, and that struck me as a really important point in your life, and looking at our young people and seeing their boundless imagination. And somehow we've lost that as adults, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so. I quite often, there's a story I tell about this idea that there was once a time when we were of an age and a mindset and an attitude that we wanted to go out into the garden and build a den. But some people slowly but surely become the person that turns around and says, yeah, but it's going to rain in an hour. And I think for me, that really encapsulates exactly where I'm coming from in everything that I do, whether it's speaking, training, presenting, writing. Everything I do is around this idea of trying to encourage people to grow down as opposed to grow up, and get back to that way of thinking again. Because I think, unfortunately, we do live in a time where far too many people have made that transition to become the person that says, but it's going to rain in an hour. There was a time where play was super exciting, and I'm really passionate about play, and I'm actually working on a huge project at the moment all around play, and this idea that playfulness is imagination, creativity, and innovation. If you remove those three things out of any business, well, we have a problem. And it's been interesting, because this last 3 months of lockdown, actually some of those things have been taken away from some people, and they've had to rediscover them in new ways and different ways, and play and playfulness is really key. So yeah, I'm really passionate about encouraging people to rediscover that inner child. It sounds a wee bit corny, but actually it can take us a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've just touched on, that type of culture within a workplace. And, many businesses are expecting their staff to be innovative, but they've almost forgotten how to be innovative. But innovation is just really imagination for grown-ups, isn't it? It's that ability to be able to switch yourself on to greater possibilities.
I think so. I mean, creativity is, for me, is the sort of starting point. Innovation is having that courage and that bravery to actually, I think, go and make it happen. And I believe a lot of people have forgotten, because it's a skill that I don't think people are given enough opportunity to practice.
Yeah.
Some people do. Some people absolutely are given that opportunity either by their colleagues, themselves, their employer on a day-to-day basis. But actually, I've learned a lot over the years that if you give people the opportunity to play, whether that's to be creative, innovative, imaginative, or literally just play, they'll take it. They might stumble a little bit, but hey, so what? So yeah, I think it's really important that we allow people more time to be innovative and creative.
Yeah, and that playfulness that certainly will help, but ultimately outlook, that happy outlook in life, and you meet some people that are, let's just say they've got a slightly negative disposition. What are some of the things that you found are good practices to keep a spring in your step, to keep positive, to keep optimistic?
Well, I'm a real subscriber to that idea that you are what you think. There was a TV show on a long time ago that used to tell us you are what you eat. Nonsense. You are what you think. And I've learned over the years that I'm in control of my thinking. I mentioned that I'd co-authored my previous books, and that was with a guy called Dr. Andy Campbell, who's actually the UK's one and only doctor of happiness. He's an amazing guy, and he's become a really good friend of mine. Hence the fact we've written books together. And I always remember he said to me one day that his big defining moment was that he realized that everywhere he goes, he's there. And I remember kind of looking at him thinking, well, yeah. And he was like, no, but like everywhere I go, I'm stuck with me. He says, it doesn't matter how fast I run, what I try and do, I'm going to be there. And he kind of looked at me and said, so I might as well be stuck with me, a version of me that I can be really, really proud of. And this was a few years ago now, and that really stuck with me. And this idea that you are what you think. So, for me, I've always, every day, making an effort to see and hear and feel and share the positives as best as I possibly can. That's not to say you can't have rubbish days. That's not to say that you can't have down days. In fact, I would say welcome the down days. You need them. You can't be happy all the time. Happiness isn't even a thing. What we can do, though, is focus on positivity. There's too many people chasing happiness. You can chase happiness all you want in life. You're not going to find it. But if we focus on positivity, focus on gratitude, focus on kindness, then we will naturally start to feel that wee bit happier, So, but if you need a day of lying in your bed, shoving ice cream into your face, then take the day and shove ice cream into your face.
Plenty of ice cream in the freezer just in case for those days. Gavin, question there from Jane. Any tips to overcome self-sabotage? And a common thing, I guess. So what's your thoughts on that, Gavin?
Well, actually, I saw in the wee comment there, she mentioned a pile of books to read that she's needing to get stuck in about. And it's very easy for me to sit here and say, just get started, just go for it. But actually, that is a fantastic piece of advice. You have to just pick it up and go for it. You have to push yourself. But at the same time, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I found myself with a pile of wonderful books building as well. And, I stare at them and think, oh, I need to get them all read. No, you don't. Just read a chapter. Give yourself 10, 15 minutes, read a chapter. If it takes 20 minutes, so what? But if you need to put it down and walk away, that's absolutely fine. So I guess it's about trying to use your time as best as you possibly can. Give yourself wee rewards. Allow yourself to sit and eat an ice lolly whilst you're reading that chapter, because ice lollies fix everything, Andy. But it's all self-talk. I'm great at self-sabotage. I'm a wonderful procrastinator, probably the most ninja level procrastinator you could ever meet in your entire life. And I think for me, it's when I get to that point of being terrified of a deadline that all of a sudden I kind of kick in. And so I've had to practice, I've had to make an effort, but this is all mindset. This is all about having that growth mindset, putting in that effort, looking to other people for advice and learning, and not being frustrated when you see other people who seem to be reading 10 books a day. I read a thing recently about some well-known entrepreneur, and they're like, yeah, they read umpteen books a day. Whatever.
Well, let's talk about your book, Gavin, because you've taken a particular approach to it, influenced by 90s music, I guess, Gavin.
Do you know, Massively. So I was a teenager in the 90s. The 90s was brilliant and crazy and weird and awful for me all at the same time. You know, being a teenager in the 90s was exciting for me because of music. But I was also behind the scenes, I was writing comedy. So in the 90s, if you wanted to be in a band, you were cool. If you were learning guitar, you were cool. If you were secretly writing scripts about characters and did this and that, you didn't tell your mates, because back then that wasn't cool. But what kind of carried me through, apart from Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer, who were my absolute heroes in comedy at that time, was music.
Yep.
And there was one album in particular, it was Dookie by Green Day. And I remember it was my 15th birthday. I went, bought a cassette. If you we'll all remember them, I'm sure.
Dating you, Gavin.
yeah. And I remember putting it into my cassette Walkman, my Sony Walkman that I got for my birthday that morning. And for the next 47 minutes or so that album is, I just remember being transported to the most, just a place that the lyrics, the music, because there's real lyrics of angst and boredom and frustration and anxiety, but there's also lyrics about making it. And that album just takes you on this incredible journey. And that stuck with me, you know, when I'm preparing my talks. And now when I'm writing my books, what I want to do is write a book that the chapters are almost like the songs. You know, you have your songs on an album that really blow your mind. You have the ones that bring you back down. You have the ones that make you cry and you don't know why, but you love it. And then you have a couple of tracks on there that are just weird and you don't like them. But then 6 months later, they've grown on you and they're now your favourites and you totally get it. So when I was putting together Life Will See You Now, the idea was that I wanted this to be like an album that you keep going back to for years to come. And wherever you're at in your life at that moment, that there'll be a chapter that works for you.
Well, Gavin, I've read the book once or listened to it at least, and it is absolutely that. It's going to be something that I'll keep going back to and listening again, having that voice in your head and you self-checking and go, yeah, do that, and maybe I could do that better. And maybe that's a good idea to switch off notifications on my phone so it doesn't interrupt my day. Lots of brilliant lessons. I will be going back and listening to it for sure. But Gavin, 12 and a half minutes. It's a rather short track, or maybe it's a long one, but we're out of time, unfortunately, Gavin. It's been a real pleasure. I'm sure you've cheered the whole host of people up there and given that positive energy that you absolutely exude, that optimism, that perspective that you've got in life. It's certainly a good way to follow. So, Gavin, I can only thank you for spending time with us this afternoon. And I guess it's for you now, it's back to the paddling pool.
It definitely is, and a huge thank you, and I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, and maybe this sunshine will last a bit longer.
No problem at all. Well, listen, I'm going to pop back in the green room. Feel free to stick around to the end of the show, but thanks very much for now, Gavin.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers. The fantastic Gavin Oates, hopefully leaving you all motivated and optimistic about the future. And as he said, his book is out, and I'm sure it's available now from all reputable booksellers if you can get in and when you can get in. And I'm sure online and downloadable versions are available also. So great. What a better way to finish off a week than with a dose of Gavin's positivity for us all. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us again for 12 and a half minutes. This week has been a fast one. Next week, I'm sure will be just as fast. And we have another great speaker for you lined up, another great guest on the show. One of Scotland's brightest lights, one of Scotland's leading entrepreneurs right now, paper baron, Poonam Gupta will be joining us next week. So once again, thanks so much for joining us. It's brilliant weather out there, so make sure you do get some time to enjoy it. Get the sunscreen on, and please do stay safe. So thanks very much, folks.